She told me I was different from every man who'd ever let her down. Took me 14 months and £41,000 to work out that being different was exactly the role I'd been cast in from the very first night. I'm Tony, 56, Liverpool, worked the docks for the best part of 30 years, then moved into logistics management when the old work started drying up. Decent career all told. Never been short of graft in me, never been afraid of it either. I want to tell you a bit about the docks, mate, because I think it shapes a particular kind of man, the work does. You grow up around blokes who look out for each other because the job demands it. Dangerous work in the old days especially. And there's a code to it, mate. You don't let your mates down. You show up, you carry your weight and a bit more if someone needs it. I carried that code with me into everything after, into the marriage, into raising the lads, and I think, looking back, it's exactly the code that eventually got used against me, because a man who's built his whole identity round showing up for people is a particular kind of target for someone clever enough to need showing up for. Married to Pauline for 26 years, 2 grown lads, and the marriage ended not through anything dramatic, just 2 people who'd quietly stopped being what the other one needed. Amicable enough split. She's settled now with a fella from her book club. Good luck to her, honestly, mate. I mean that. I want to be honest, the years after the divorce were quieter than I expected, mate. Not unhappy exactly, but with a particular kind of emptiness. A man who'd spent 30 years on the docks and 26 years being a husband suddenly with nobody specifically needing him to show up for anything. And that's a stranger feeling than people expect, mate. The absence of being needed. I want to tell you what that emptiness actually looked like day to day, mate, because I think it matters to understanding why a charity event of all things was where I ended up that particular evening. I'd taken to filling me weeks with small projects, fixing things round the flat that didn't really need fixing, going for long walks I didn't properly need, the kind of busy work a man invents for himself when the real purpose has gone out of his days. A neighbour, decent woman, mentioned the expat group one morning over the fence, said they did all sorts, social evenings, the odd charity thing, might do me good to get out and meet people rather than rattling round on me own. I joined more out of a sense that I should, rather than any real enthusiasm, mate, and the school fundraiser was only the second event I'd actually gone to. Went out to Cebu about 2 years back, mate, a proper retirement plan rather than some midlife flit, did me research, sorted me finances, the whole bit, and I met Marisol about 3 months in at a community event. A charity thing, actually, mate. Not a bar, not a club, a proper fundraiser for a local school that an expat group I'd joined had organised. I want to say that clearly because I think it matters. This wasn't me wandering into a nightlife situation with me guard half down from a few pints. This was broad daylight, sober, sensible circumstances. She was helping organise it, mate, ran a small charity herself, supporting kids from a poorer barangay, proper passionate about it. The kind of passion that's hard not to be drawn to in a person. We got talking about the school, about what the kids needed, and she mentioned, almost in passing, that her last relationship had ended badly. An Australian fella who'd promised to help fund the charity properly, and then just disappeared one day, stopped answering, left her with debts she'd taken on believing his promises. I want to describe that first conversation a bit more, mate, because the detail of how she told it mattered enormously. She didn't dump it on me all at once, didn't perform the victim the way you might expect from someone running a long con from the very first hour. She mentioned it almost reluctantly, mate, like she didn't really want to burden a stranger with it. And when I asked a follow-up question, she seemed almost surprised I'd cared enough to ask. Said most people just changed the subject when she mentioned it. That reluctance, mate, that apparent discomfort at her own vulnerability, that's what made it land so completely different from a sob story. It felt like something I was being trusted with, rather than something being deployed at me. I want to tell you what that did to something in me, mate, hearing that. I've got 2 lads of me own, raised them right, and something about a woman being let down like that, promised something and abandoned. It lit a particular kind of fire in me, the protective sort, the sort a docker grows up with whether he wants it or not. You look after people. That's just how it's done where I'm from. We started seeing each other proper after about a month, and from very early on, mate, she'd make these comments, small ones at first, about how different I was from him, from the Australian fella, how I actually followed through on what I said, how I genuinely cared about the kids at the charity, rather than just talking about caring. I want to be honest with you, every single one of those comments landed exactly where it was meant to land, because by that point I'd already met some of the kids myself, mate, proper lovely children, and I did genuinely care. That part was never the lie. The first proper money came about 2 months in, a roof repair on the small building the charity used, leaking badly apparently. Kids getting wet during lessons when it rained, and I paid for it without a second thought, mate. £600 felt like nothing against a child staying dry. Marisol thanked me with tears in her eyes, said, "You're not like him, Tony. You actually show up." I want to describe the pattern properly, mate, because once I understood it, looking back, it was almost a script she was running, except a script built specifically around making me feel like the hero in a story where the villain was always some other man, never her, never the charity, always whichever absent figure had let everyone down before I arrived to fix it. New school supplies the kids needed because the old donor had stopped giving, a teacher's salary that needed covering for a few months because the regular funding had fallen through, a medical bill for one of the children's mothers because nobody else had stepped up. Every single ask came wrapped in the same comparison. You're not like the last one, you're not like him, you actually care, and every single time I paid, I wasn't just helping a charity. I was proving something, mate. Proving I was the good one, the different one, the man who didn't abandon people the way that Australian apparently had. I want to tell you about a specific evening, about month 6, because it's the one I think about most. Marisol took me to actually meet the children properly, a proper visit to the barangay, and I sat in a small classroom with maybe 15 kids. Mate, and they sang for me, actually sang some little song about thanking visitors, and one wee girl came up after and gave me a drawing she'd done, a stick figure she said was me, holding an umbrella over a house, because I was the one who'd fixed the roof. I want to tell you, mate, sat in that classroom with that drawing in me hand, there was no part of me capable of doubting a single thing about Marisol or the charity. None whatsoever. Whatever happened with the money after that, I want you to understand that moment was real, those children were real, and I think that's actually what made the whole thing work so completely, mate. Because the foundation wasn't entirely fake, it was just built on something real and then used. I went back to that classroom several more times over the following months, mate, and got to know some of the other kids by name too. A lad called Bong Bong, who was mad about basketball and asked me every single visit whether English football was as good as the NBA, which I never quite managed to convince him of, and a quiet girl near the back who never said much, but always made sure I had a chair before anyone else thought to offer one. I want to tell you, mate, these weren't abstractions to me, weren't props in someone else's con as far as I experienced them. They were children I'd come to properly know and care about. And that's precisely what made it impossible for me to apply the same careful skepticism to Marisol that I'd have applied to any business deal back on the docks. Because doubting her felt, in some confused way, like doubting them too. Over 14 months, mate, I gave just over £41,000. The roof, the teacher's salary that kept needing covering, the medical bills, a proper expansion of the building itself that she said would let them take in twice as many children, building materials, labour costs, all of it documented, all of it photographed, kids in front of half-built walls, kids in new uniforms, kids holding new textbooks, every single payment producing exactly the kind of evidence that made the next payment feel not just reasonable, but necessary. I want to tell you what finally cracked it, mate, because it wasn't suspicion on my part, not really. It was me own son, Michael. Came out to visit about month 13, and he's a careful lad, works in finance back home, and he asked, quite reasonably, whether the charity was registered properly, whether there were proper accounts anyone could see. I said I didn't know, never thought to ask, and Michael said, "Dad, that's not normal for an organisation taking this kind of money, even a small local one. There should be paperwork." I want to describe that conversation with Michael a bit more, mate. Michael works with numbers all day, mate. Audits, that kind of thing. And he said something that stuck with me, Dad. "I'm not asking because I think you're being lied to. I'm asking because in my line of work, Any organization handling this kind of money without proper accounts is a red flag regardless of who's running it or how good their intentions are. It's just sound practice to check. I asked Marisol, gentle as I could, mate, framed it as just wanting to understand the structure better for me own peace of mind. She got hurt by the question in a way that, looking back, mate, was the exact same hurt response she'd have learned worked on me from the very first conversation about the Australian fella. The implication being that questioning the charity was somehow questioning her own integrity, putting me in the position of the man who doubts rather than the man who shows up. Michael wasn't having it though, mate, bless him, and he did some digging himself over the following week, found that the charity wasn't registered as any kind of official organisation at all, just an informal thing Marisol ran herself, with no oversight, no other trustees, no proper accounts. The building I'd funded the expansion of did exist, mate. I want to be fair about that. The children were real, the school was real, but the money I'd been sending for specific things, the teacher's salary, the medical bills, there was no way to actually verify any of it had gone where she said. And Michael found, through a contact at the school itself, that the teacher she'd claimed needed her salary covered had actually left months before I'd started paying for her supposedly. I want to tell you about the actual confrontation properly, mate, because Michael came with me to it, and I think his presence changed how it went, gave me a kind of backbone I'm not sure I'd have had alone. We met at a cafe, neutral ground, and Michael laid the findings out calmly, professionally, the same way he'd present a finding at work, I'd imagine, no accusation in his tone. Just facts, dates, the teacher who'd left, the missing accounts, the unregistered status. I confronted her with Michael there, mate, and I want to tell you, it was the children's drawing I kept thinking about the whole way through that conversation. The umbrella, the house, the wee lassie's careful handwriting. Marisol didn't break down the way I half expected, mate. She got cold instead. Said I'd never really understood the realities of running something like this in a country like hers, that Westerners always wanted receipts for kindness, and that hurt worse than almost anything else she could have said, because some small part of me still wanted to believe that was a fair point, rather than the exact same manipulation that had been running the whole way through. £41,000, mate, and the particular cruelty of it being wrapped around real children, a real building, a real need, used as the canvas for something that wasn't real at all in the way I'd believed it to be. I want to tell you what's actually happened since, mate, because it's not as simple as just walking away angry. I still go to that barangay, still see some of those kids, because whatever Marisol did, the building's still there, the children still need things, and Michael helped me find a proper registered organisation locally that does similar work with full transparency, proper accounts, an actual board of trustees, and I support them now instead modest amounts. The kind a sensible man gives, rather than the kind a man gives when he's trying to prove something to himself. I want to describe the first time I went back to see the wee girl who'd drawn me that picture, mate, because I needed to know, properly needed to know, that the children themselves hadn't been part of any of it, that I hadn't somehow misjudged everyone involved rather than just the one woman running it. She remembered me, mate, came running over same as before. No idea any of the adult business had happened, and I sat with her for a while and felt something settle in me that I badly needed settling, the confirmation that what I'd cared about, the actual kids, had been real, even though the structure around them hadn't been what I'd believed. I went through a fair few weeks, mate, after everything came out, where I questioned whether I should pull away from the whole barangay entirely, whether continuing to be involved was just me refusing to learn the lesson properly. Michael talked me through that too, mate, said, Dad, the lesson isn't stop caring. The lesson is, care with your eyes open, there's a real difference. We found the proper organisation about 6 weeks after the confrontation with Marisol, and I've been with them 18 months now, mate. Full transparency, quarterly statements, the works, and it's a smaller, quieter kind of giving than what I had with Marisol. No tears of gratitude. No being told I'm different from every man who's let someone down before, just proper, sensible, accountable support, and I've come to prefer it considerably. Michael said something to me on his last night before flying home that I've held on to since. He said, Dad, you're allowed to care about people without needing to be the hero who proves he's better than every man who's ever let them down. You don't owe anyone that performance, not even yourself. I told Pauline too, mate. Eventually, a few months on, rang her up out of the blue and just told her the whole thing. Surprised myself doing it, if I'm honest. She was quiet for a while on the phone, and then she said something I hadn't expected, mate. She said, "Tony, you always did need someone to need you, even with me, especially toward the end. And I used to find that exhausting, if I'm honest. You trying to fix things I hadn't asked you to fix." I sat with that a good while after we hung up, mate, because it landed somewhere true. Somewhere Michael's comment about not needing to prove anything had already started to open up in me. And I think between the two of them, me son and me ex-wife, they'd named the exact same thing from two different angles, and hearing it twice over finally made it stick properly. If you're someone who's ever been told you're different, you're not like the others, you actually show up, I'd ask you to notice how that comparison makes you feel, mate, and whether you're being asked to help because of a genuine need, or being cast in a role specifically built to make refusing feel impossible. Real kindness doesn't need you to be the hero of someone else's story about every man who came before you. It just needs you to ask the same sensible questions you'd ask about anything else. And a person worth your generosity will never once make you feel guilty for asking them.